After the signings of Fer Lopez and Colombian international Jean Arias, Wolves now find themselves 4 players too many over the homegrown quota going into the Premier League season. So let's speak a bit about some homegrown players I think they could bring in and perhaps should bring in this summer, and also why they find themselves in this situation in the first place. So let's get straight into this one. Last season, Wolves had the least amount of homegrown players within their squad, tied with the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City and Manchester United. Now, the homegrown quota has also fluctuated throughout this transfer window so far for Wolves, with Kiana Herver being classed as a homegrown player. I think a lot of people do tend to forget that. However, they've also sold the likes of Joe Hodge and loaned the likes of Tommy Doyle as well, so that is yet another 2 homegrown players out the door. However, in order to free up their homegrown quota, selling the likes of Gonzalo Guedes, potentially Fabio Silva, and obviously a few other outgoings definitely expected to go this summer, having also let go of a hell of a lot of players this summer, might I add, I do still think that bringing in some homegrown players could be extremely useful for Wolves moving forward. So let's take a look at some homegrown players that I think Wolves should bring in next season. First up is 21-year-old Callum Doyle from Manchester City. Now, he's made 156 senior appearances, is a left-sided centre-back and he is extremely good on the ball. I've been really impressed with Doyle for a long time now. He's been really successful at Sunderland, Leicester, Coventry and Norwich more recently. And generally, there's not many defenders in the Championship that I would look at and say has got the potential to play in the Premier League for a long, long time. But Callum Doyle is absolutely one of them. Now, we know that Vitor Pereira wants a left-sided centre-back that could cover and also rotate for Totti, because Totti plays a hell of a lot of football in this Wolves side and is absolutely crucial to it. Now, for me, Callum Doyle is a very similar profile. He is a lot taller, but in terms of on the ball and his comfortability on it, I think he's absolutely suitable for that role, and actually probably the perfect player in that role. I do actually think as well he had potential to come in and actually start. He's that good. Now, for £10 million, which has been reported most recently, I think it's an absolutely incredible deal. You're going to do well to find a player of that quality for such a cheap fee that can play as a left back, can play as a left wing back if really needed, although it wouldn't be my choice, and can also play as that left-sided centre-half predominantly in this Wolves side. I'm really impressed with him as a footballer. Callum Doyle is absolutely ludicrous when it comes to progressing the ball, as I briefly touched on. He averages 5 progressive passes per 90, which is absolutely ludicrous in itself. He also averages 0.55 successful take-ons as a centre-back per 90, and he averages 0.94 progressive carries per 90 as a centre-back. Now, it is very different to the way that Totti plays, but in terms of those left-sided centre-halves that can provide useful long-range passes, and also those passes into the wingers, into the full-backs as well, / wing-backs in this Vitor Pereira system, and also coming into midfield at times, I still think even for his height and his stature, he's absolutely could do that in this system, and I think he would be brilliant for Wolves. So first up is Callum Doyle. Next up is Tyler Morton from Liverpool. Now, I understand some of you may have reservations given the fact that he's only made 79 Championship appearances and has been in and out of the Liverpool squad for a number of years now, although he did play at the San Siro in a win against AC Milan in the Champions League a few years ago. But anyway, I think Tyler Morton will be an unbelievable signing for many reasons, really. Now, the fact that Liverpool only want around £15 million for him, I think is absolutely ludicrous, because I think he's absolutely brilliant and would be perfect for any Premier League club in and around that sort of bottom half, looking with aspiration to bring in a young player that can go to that next level, and Tyler Morton absolutely is that for me. He's a bit of a hybrid midfielder as well. He can play as a 6 or as an 8. He's very tough in the tackle. He's also very, very good in terms of his passing range and his passing ability as well, and he's not afraid to try and break the lines and play those adventurous passes as well, and he's not one of these players that also overdoes it with adventurous passes that just aren't going to get through. He's a very, very assured player, and I'm sure if you haven't watched him, please go and check out his under-21 Euros campaign, because he was absolutely brilliant in the limited minutes, funnily enough, that he did play in that tournament. But his ball in for Jonathan Rowe in the final was brilliant, and he made a massive impact coming off the bench as well in the final, and he looked one of England's better players again in that final. So for me, Tyler Morton's an absolute no-brainer, and for the fee, it would be absolutely ludicrous. The only sticking point on this deal for me, the thing that I could see personally, is the fact that will he come in and want to be a backup, given the fact that he can go somewhere maybe lower end Premier League or higher end Championship for a team that's looking to get promotion and start week in, week out. However, if he does agree to come to Wolves, and if Wolves went in for him and they could get him, this would be an absolutely ridiculous deal in my personal opinion. Another option in midfield that I've seen quite heavily linked, to be honest, aside from perhaps the other two that I've mentioned, is Josh Brownhill. Now, it's not a sexy name, I'm well aware of that, and it's not one of the most exciting names in the market. I think Yunus Musa from AC Milan would have been a really good link, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen either. And also, he would, funnily enough, count for the homegrown quota as well. Now, Josh Brownhill is absolutely ridiculously experienced in English football. He's made 462 appearances in English football, got 98 goal contributions in that time. He can play as a 6, can play as an 8, can play as a 10, and has been absolutely crucial in both of the promotion seasons for Burnley, in which under Vincent Kompany and under Scott Parker, and has been a brilliant servant for Burnley. And also, he's a free agent, which makes this deal more appetising, especially to the likes of Fosun and Jeff Shee and Domenico Tetti, I'd imagine. Now, the only sticking point is he's 29. However, I think if you want to go out there and get a homegrown player with experience that can also play a multitude of those positions, can even step in the 10 if needed, if there is injuries in those areas, which I doubt because Wolves have a lot of offensive threat. But again, Josh Brownhill would be absolutely brilliant in my personal opinion. And as you can see, I'll put some of his statistics on screen from last season, some of his underlying numbers as well, because they're extremely impressive. And they have been in a lot of the promotion seasons under Scott Parker and Vincent Kompany. But one thing I love about Josh Brownhill as well is his ability to get around the pitch for someone who perhaps you wouldn't associate with necessarily a hard worker, but his graft and his ability to work hard is absolutely brilliant. And Josh Brownhill, for me, would slot into this Wolves side very, very well and be a very decent level of a backup / rotational player to take the strain off the likes of Andre and João Gomez in one-off games, or in, just generally around the squad as well. He's a very good personality. So for me, for a lot of reasons, Josh Brownhill ticks a box. However, the only sticking point, like I say, I think would be his age. But equally, to find someone with over 450 appearances in professional football, especially in England, a lot of appearances in the Premier League as well, I just think it seems like a very much a no-brainer signing. But equally, let me know what you think about this one, Wolves fans, because I do think it's a very controversial one. But I do think it makes a lot of sense. And last but not least, for those of you who are still worried about the wing-back positions, now, Kiana Herver, I think we must all remember, is a homegrown player, and I've reiterated that throughout this video, so I do think that's useful in sort of listening to, really. However, Ainsley Maitland-Niles from Lyon, I think would be a really smart signing for a few reasons. Now, again, it's not an attractive name. He's played for West Brom, so people might not like him, even though he literally was there for a loan when they were in the Premier League. And generally, I think it's a really smart signing, despite the fact that, like I've said, it's not an attractive proposition to some who haven't watched him in the last few years. But he's had a real good 2 seasons at Lyon now. He made 44 appearances in the previous campaign, getting 8 goal contributions in that time, 3 of them assists in the Europa League as well. And generally, he's a player that's played, I think he's played 1 game in the Champions League in his career as a young lad. He's played Europa League, Championship, Premier League football, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and generally is a really, really experienced footballer, 361 appearances, as I've said. Now, I do think with Maitland-Niles, one of the things you also should consider is the fact that he's available in most positions. He can play as a right winger, a right midfielder, a right wing back, a right back, a 6, an 8. He's also played some games in the 10 as well during injury crises at a few clubs as well. So I do think that's something to consider as well. Now, another really interesting point on Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and Lyon more importantly, is the fact that they're in massive financial trouble and have been for a number of sort of years now, really, with regards to how they're run as a club. Now, I think Wolves could definitely take advantage of that. There is clubs sniffing around him as well. I think Galatasaray, Besiktas are 2 of them. However, Everton are also in for him as well, it seems. So I do think there'll be a bit of competition in getting him. But in terms of a fee, I don't think it'll be that much based on the fact that Lyon do need to sell still to get out of the trouble that they're in. And I do think Maitland-Niles will be a really smart pickup, maybe 10 to 15 million pounds in that sort of range, maybe even less, but with a few more add-ons perhaps. I do think it'd be a really smart deal. And again, it's not an exciting signing, particularly in terms of a name, but I do think for Wolves he'd be really, really good. And he's so comfortable operating down that right flank. And he's really comfortable at inverting. He's really comfortable at going wide. He's really comfortable at progressing the ball and driving with it. So generally, I think he'd be a really, really smart signing for Wolves. Let me know what you think about Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Wolves fans, because I think it'd be a really smart one. Let me know what you think about some of the deals and some of the players that I have mentioned in this video, because I think they're very interesting options and very valid options personally, and I think most of them should come in, to be honest, but we never know with this ownership, and we never know with Tetti and the type of players that Vitor Pereira also wants in his system. But let me know what you think about this, Wolves fans. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, because it's really helping me out at the moment and I'm loving making content for you guys, and comment below what you think about these players, and I'll see you in the next video.